In today's story, a homeowner discovers that her neighbor has advertised her property, collected deposits, and promised strangers they can move in. Before we begin, settle in and enjoy tonight's story. My neighbor put my house up for rent while I still lived there. The first couple arrived at 9 in the morning carrying a tape measure. I opened my front door expecting a parcel and found a man and woman standing on the step with their phones in their hands. The woman smiled. "Hi, we're here for the viewing." I assumed they had the wrong address. They checked the house number twice. "No," the man said, "this is definitely it." He turned his phone toward me. The screen showed a rental listing for my house, not a similar house, mine. The listing used a photograph of the front door with my hanging basket, my car partly visible in the driveway, and the small crack above the downstairs window that I had been meaning to repair. The rent was listed as £950 a month. That was low enough to attract attention and high enough not to look obviously fraudulent. Available immediately, long-term let, owner managed. The contact name was Adrian Holt. Adrian lived next door. I told the couple the property was not for rent. The woman looked embarrassed. "We've already spoken to the landlord." "I am the owner." They exchanged a glance. The man opened a message thread. Adrian had told them that the current occupant was a relative who was moving out and might be emotional about the transition. I asked whether they had paid him anything. They had transferred £200 as a holding deposit. Before I could respond, another car stopped outside. A young man got out carrying a folder. He was there for the 10 o'clock viewing. That was when I called the police. The officer who answered told me not to let anyone inside and to gather screenshots of the listing, messages, and payment details. She said an officer would attend, but because nobody had entered the property and the payments had been made voluntarily, it might take some time. The first couple stayed while I photographed the listing. The interior pictures were worse than the front image. My kitchen appeared exactly as it had looked 3 weeks earlier, including a bowl of oranges on the counter and a tea towel hanging from the oven. The living room photograph showed my grey sofa, bookshelves, and framed photograph of my sister. The bedroom image had been taken from the doorway. My bed was unmade. I had never uploaded those photographs anywhere. The listing included 12 images. Some were old estate agent pictures from before I bought the house. Others were recent. Someone had been inside. Adrian appeared in his driveway while I was still speaking to the prospective tenants. He was carrying a bag of gardening tools and acted as if he had just noticed the gathering. "Everything all right?" he asked. The woman pointed at him. "That's him." Adrian looked at me. His surprise lasted less than a second. Then he sighed. "I was hoping to explain this privately. You listed my house for rent." "It's more complicated than that." "No, it is." He told the prospective tenants there had been a misunderstanding and promised to return their deposits. The young man asked whether the viewing was cancelled. Adrian said, "For today." I said, "Forever." Adrian lowered his voice. "You don't know what's been agreed." "I know I own this house. Legally, yes." There was something about the way he said legally that made everyone go quiet. I asked what he thought he owned. He looked toward the 3 strangers standing beside my gate. "This isn't the place. You made it the place when you advertised my bedroom." Adrian told me he had been given authority to manage the property. By whom? He did not answer. Instead, he walked back into his house. The couple stayed until the police arrived. They showed the officer their messages and bank transfer. The young man had not paid yet, but he had received a tenancy agreement by email. The document named Adrian as the property manager. The landlord was listed as Harper Residential Holdings. I had never heard of it. The signature beneath the landlord's name was mine. 2 strangers arrived at my front door carrying a tape measure. They said they had paid a deposit to rent my house. The listing contained photographs of my kitchen, bedroom, and living room taken while I was still living there. The landlord contact was my neighbor, and the tenancy agreement already carried my signature. The attending officer knocked on Adrian's door. He did not answer. His car was still outside. She took a report, advised the tenants to contact their banks, and told me to change my locks immediately. I booked an emergency locksmith. While I waited, I searched the company listed on the tenancy agreement. Harper Residential Holdings had been incorporated 8 months earlier. Its registered office was a mailbox service. The sole director was a woman named Louise Holt, Adrian's sister. The company had no website and no property listings under its own name. I downloaded the filing documents. The correspondence address matched Adrian's house. The locksmith arrived shortly after noon. He examined my front and back locks and said neither showed obvious damage. I asked whether a copied key could have been used. Easily, he said, especially if someone had access to the original for a few minutes. Adrian had possessed my spare key once. 6 months earlier, a pipe burst while I was visiting my sister. Adrian called to say water was running beneath my kitchen door. I gave him permission to retrieve the spare from a coded lockbox behind the shed. He helped the plumber get inside. Afterward, I changed the lockbox code. I did not change the key. The locksmith replaced both external cylinders. Then he asked about the door inside my garage. I had almost forgotten it existed. Our houses were semi-detached, with narrow garages attached at the outer sides. Mine had an old wooden door in the rear wall that opened into a small storage passage. The passage ended at a brick wall. The estate agent had told me it was left over from when the properties formed one large house. The locksmith examined the door. The lock had fresh scratches. He opened it with my key. The storage passage smelled damp and unused. Boxes of paint and garden tools lined one wall. At the far end, the brickwork looked different from the rest. Several bricks were newer. The mortar around them was pale. The locksmith pressed one. It moved. Someone had created a removable section in the wall between my storage passage and Adrian's garage. He pulled 2 bricks free. Behind them was a plywood panel. The panel had a handle on Adrian's side. Adrian did not need my key to enter the house. He had built a route between our garages. The police returned. This time, they treated the situation differently. An officer photographed the altered wall, the scratches around my internal door, and the recent listing images. They attempted to contact Adrian again. His house was empty. His car remained in the driveway, but a rear gate stood open. The prospective tenants later confirmed that Adrian refunded both holding deposits that afternoon from a different bank account. The listing disappeared by evening. I thought that might be the end of the immediate danger. Then I found the red folder. It was wedged behind a stack of decorating sheets in the garage passage. Inside were copies of my council tax statement, mortgage summary, electricity bill, and driving license. Some were genuine documents that had gone missing from my post. Others were altered. One council tax statement listed Harper Residential Holdings as the liable party. A letter supposedly from my mortgage provider stated that the property had entered assisted management following payment difficulties. I had never missed a mortgage payment. The folder also contained 3 tenancy agreements, each named different tenants. Each required a deposit and 3 months rent in advance. The move-in dates were staggered over the next 6 weeks. Adrian had not planned one rental scam. He had rented the same house to several people. I called the officer handling the case. She asked me to bring the folder to the station rather than continue searching. Before I left, I photographed every page. One document carried a recent date and the name of a letting agent I recognized. The agency had valued my house the previous month. I was not planning to move, but I had considered remortgaging and wanted an updated valuation. Adrian had seen the agent arrive. The fake mortgage letter was dated 2 days later. He had interpreted the valuation as evidence that I might be in financial trouble. Or he wanted other people to think I was. At the police station, an officer asked whether Adrian had ever offered to buy my house. He had. The previous winter, he told me his sister wanted to invest in rental property and might make a private offer. I declined without asking for a price. A month later, he complained that my hedge reduced access to his driveway. Then he claimed part of my garage roof crossed his boundary. At the time, both disputes felt petty. Now they looked like preparation. The officer said the papers suggested more than deposit theft. Someone was constructing a version of events in which I had lost control of the property and authorized a company to manage it. The false tenancy agreements could create chaos. Even invalid documents might force me to prove ownership repeatedly, while strangers demanded access, refunds, or accommodation. The police searched Adrian's house that evening after locating him at his sister's address. They did not arrest him immediately. He claimed Harper Residential Holdings had entered a legitimate management agreement with me. He produced emails from an address using my name. He showed them a scanned contract with my signature. He claimed the garage passage was historic and that I knew it connected the houses. Then he accused me of attempting to escape agreements after collecting advance rent. The officer called me just before midnight. Did you receive any money from prospective tenants? No. Did you authorize Adrian to manage the property? No. Did you create an email address ending in 1978? I wasn't born in 1978. There was a pause. That helps. The false account used the birth year of the previous owner. Adrian had copied information from an old estate document and attached it to my name. It was a mistake, but not enough to settle everything. He had documents. I had documents. Until the digital records were examined, the dispute looked more complicated than it was. The next morning, I received a call from a woman named Priya. She said she had paid £3,800 to Harper Residential Holdings and was due to move into my house in 9 days. She had sold most of her furniture and given notice on her current flat. She sounded close to tears. I told her I had never authorized the rental. She said Adrian had conducted a video viewing from inside the house. He walked through my kitchen, living room, and upstairs landing while speaking to her on his phone. The video had been recorded 4 days earlier. I had been at work. Priya sent me a copy. Adrian's face did not appear, but his voice was clear. He described my appliances, parking space, and heating system. When Priya asked about the framed family photographs, he said the current occupant had not finished packing. At the end of the video, he entered my bedroom. He opened my wardrobe to demonstrate the storage space. I watched him move my clothes aside. That footage gave the police proof of entry. It gave me something else. In the bedroom mirror, a second person appeared for less than a second. A woman holding a clipboard, Louise Holt, Adrian's sister. One tenant sent me the video viewing my neighbor had conducted inside my house. He walked through my kitchen, opened cupboards, and entered my bedroom while I was at work. He even moved my clothes to show the wardrobe space. Then the mirror caught someone else standing behind him, his sister, holding a clipboard. Louise was arrested first. She told police she believed I had hired the company and that Adrian handled all communication. That defense weakened when investigators found the listing photographs on her laptop. Several image files included location data and timestamps. The newest photographs had been taken during periods when I was at work. Her laptop also contained templates for tenancy agreements, utility transfer letters, and landlord references. Some documents used my identity, others used different property owners. The scheme extended beyond my house. Harper Residential Holdings had advertised 4 properties it did not own. 2 were empty homes awaiting probate. 1 belonged to an elderly man in residential care. Mine was the only one still occupied. That made me the most dangerous target and the most useful. If Adrian could create enough evidence that I had authorized management, my objections could be presented as a dispute over money rather than proof of fraud. The midpoint reversal came from a deposit ledger. My house was not supposed to remain rented. Adrian planned to buy it. The ledger contained expected income from 6 tenants, but beside my address was a handwritten note: pressure until refinance fails, offer after default marker. He was not merely exploiting the house for deposits. He wanted to damage my ability to refinance, create disputes around occupancy, and then purchase the property cheaply through his sister's company. The tenants were tools. Their deposits funded the operation. Their agreements generated records showing that Harper Residential Holdings controlled the property. Their complaints would make the house look legally toxic. Adrian expected me to accept a low offer rather than spend months untangling everything. The valuation visit had accelerated the plan. He assumed I was preparing to refinance or sell. The police found draft letters addressed to my mortgage provider claiming that I had moved out and granted commercial management rights to Harper. They also found a partially completed application to redirect my post. The garage route allowed Adrian to remove letters before I saw them. The missing mortgage statements and utility bills in the red folder had not been copied from my rubbish. He took them from inside my house. I stayed with my sister for a week while police completed searches and a contractor permanently sealed the garage passage. I installed cameras in the hallway, kitchen, garage, and garden. I replaced every external lock. My mortgage provider added a fraud warning and confirmed no changes had been made to the loan. The land registry placed a restriction requiring additional identity checks before any transfer or charge could be registered. Those measures protected the title. They did not solve the tenant problem. Priya and 2 other victims had paid substantial sums. One family arrived from another city with a removal van because Adrian had not told them the tenancy was fraudulent. They stood outside my house with 2 children and everything they owned. I had to explain that they could not enter. The father believed I was part of the scam. He shouted at me until a police officer arrived. His anger was understandable. The paperwork looked real. They had keys. Adrian had mailed each tenant a copied front door key. The new locks were the only reason those keys did not work. The family had nowhere to go that night. The council arranged temporary accommodation, but they still lost storage costs, travel expenses, and most of their deposit. That was the part Adrian seemed never to consider. He understood records, leverage, and property values. He treated tenants as entries in a ledger. The fraud became real only when people arrived with suitcases. Adrian was released under investigation after his first interview. He returned home but was ordered not to contact me. For 2 weeks, he complied. Then Harper Residential Holdings sent me a formal invoice for £12,400. It claimed the company had performed property management services, emergency maintenance, tenant acquisition, and legal administration. The invoice included a warning that unpaid fees might result in a charge against the property. My solicitor said the claim was baseless. She also said Adrian knew that. The invoice was another document designed to exist. Even an invalid claim could appear during refinancing or sale. I authorized my solicitor to issue a cease and desist letter and prepare civil proceedings. Then I made a mistake. I confronted Adrian. He was standing beside his van one evening when I returned from work. I asked how many people he had taken money from. He looked at the cameras above my door before answering. I didn't take anything. Your company did, not my company, your sister's company. You should speak to her. You built a hole through my garage wall. That passage was always there. You entered my bedroom. You gave me a key 6 months ago for a plumber. You never withdrew permission in writing. That was not legally meaningful, but he said it with enough confidence that I briefly questioned myself. Then he smiled. You should have taken the offer. He had not made one recently. I asked what he meant. Adrian realized his mistake. He turned toward his house. I followed him to the gate and said, "What offer?" He stopped. Louise sent it. I had received no offer. My solicitor had received none. The police found no completed offer among the seized documents. That meant something had been sent and intercepted. I checked the hallway camera recordings from the previous week. At 5:42 on Tuesday morning, a hand appeared through my letterbox. The person used a long metal tool to hook an envelope from the floor. The camera captured only the sleeve, but the envelope had already been photographed by the external camera when it was delivered. The return address belonged to a local solicitor. My solicitor contacted the firm. They had sent a formal purchase offer on behalf of Harper Residential Holdings. The price was 40% below market value. The letter claimed the house had complex occupancy and management disputes that justified the reduction. The offer expired after 7 days. Adrian had stolen it before I could see it. He wanted to create a record showing that I ignored a supposed solution. My solicitor obtained a copy. The purchase funds were to come from a private lender. The lender's name matched a company found in Louise's deposit ledger. It was not independent. it was controlled by the same cousin who helped register Harper Residential Holdings. The scam had a final stage. Harper would create problems around my property. A connected lender would finance the low purchase. The house would then be cleaned up and refinanced at full value. The tenant deposits covered the upfront costs. Adrian and Louise were not improvising. They had built a small property acquisition scheme around vulnerable or administratively complicated homes. Mine was supposed to be the easiest because Adrian lived next door. The police found a note beside my address in the company ledger: pressure until refinance fails. Offer after default marker. The fake tenants were not the final goal. My neighbor wanted to create disputes, damage my mortgage options, and make the house impossible to sell, then buy it cheaply through his sister's company. The stolen offer changed the criminal investigation. So did the hallway footage. Police searched Adrian's house again. This time, they found a metal retrieval tool beside a stack of intercepted post. Some envelopes belonged to me. Others belonged to previous occupants of nearby properties. They also found 31 keys labeled with addresses. Several matched homes advertised by Harper Residential Holdings. One key belonged to the elderly man's bungalow. Another belonged to a vacant probate property. Adrian had worked as a maintenance contractor for a local housing association years earlier. He retained keys, copied others, and learned which properties were empty, disputed, or poorly monitored. He used legitimate access from old jobs to build future scams. My house became personal only after I refused his purchase suggestion. The prosecution took more than a year. Adrian denied entering my home without permission. He claimed the key I gave him created continuing authority. He said the garage opening predated my ownership. He blamed Louise for the listings and financial records. Louise blamed him for every operational decision. The deposit victims gave evidence. Priya provided the video viewing. The image metadata connected Louise's laptop to photographs taken inside my house. The stolen post linked Adrian to the false paperwork. The ledger established motive. The copied keys connected both of them to other properties. Neither received the dramatic sentence people imagine for elaborate fraud. Louise pleaded guilty to several fraud offenses and received a custodial sentence. Adrian was convicted of fraud, burglary, theft of mail, and related offenses. His sentence was longer because of the physical entries and the number of victims. Some tenant deposits were recovered from frozen accounts. Most were not. Priya received less than half of what she paid. The family with the removal van recovered their deposit, but not their additional costs. My own financial loss came from legal fees, security work, missed workdays, and the refinancing delay. I did not lose the house. I also stopped feeling safe inside it. Every sound from the garage made me check the cameras. I kept internal doors locked even when I was home. I considered selling, but the thought of viewings, paperwork, and strangers examining the house made me physically tense. 6 months after Adrian was sentenced, Louise's company entered compulsory liquidation. Harper Residential Holdings disappeared from the register. Adrian's house was sold to cover debts and legal claims. The new owners demolished his garage during renovation. They invited me over before removing the shared wall. Behind a layer of plywood, builders found a narrow shelf running between the properties. On it were old envelopes, key tags, and photographs. Most belonged to other houses. One photograph showed my kitchen before I bought the property. The previous owner stood near the sink. Adrian was visible through the window behind her. On the back, someone had written, "He keeps offering to manage the place. Do not give him a key."
You've been listening to Low Light Stories, original fiction for late night listening. New stories are added regularly, so subscribe if you'd like to hear the next one. Thanks for listening.